So like I said, this may not be your typical lecture. This is more so just to share my experience kind of transitioning into entrepreneurship. So my understanding is you guys are in college right now. You're studying engineering, maybe a few other different subjects. My background is in finance. I actually went to school for marketing and then transitioned to getting into the digital marketing space and the technical consulting space. So before I kind of get into it, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, about my journey, and then I can share, I guess, some key takeaways that hopefully will be actionable if you guys get to the point where you want to start your own business and venture out and build something awesome. So my name is Daniel. When I initially graduated, I kind of hopped around jobs a little bit because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I grew up in a family business. My father was an entrepreneur. His father was an entrepreneur. So I always kind of had that itch to be my own boss. But it didn't start out like that because when I graduated, I had close to $100,000 in debt, didn't have a high paying job, and didn't really have a place to live, right? So I wasn't starting off on the best foot. I was kind of at a disadvantage financially. So on top of that, I didn't really have a clear business model or an idea that I can execute on with that financial position. So I knew a few things had to change in order for me to transition into ultimately starting my own business. The first thing was I had to eliminate my debt because my minimum monthly payment on my student loans alone was $890 a month. On top of that, I also had to afford rent. I had to pay for my car insurance. So I needed a way to make cash and also make enough cash where I can start saving to position myself with a little bit of runway to take that leap and take a risk on myself. I was able to accomplish that. Like I said, I was working for a number of different companies within the financial services industry. I ended up at the later part of my career working in private equity. And if any of you are familiar with private equity, people kind of perceive that as the holy grail of opportunity because if you can stomach it long enough, you can make a lot of money. But you're also trading your soul, as I like to say. So you're at the mercy of the institution you're working for. The hours are very intense. You may make a great living, but you're spending a lot of time, you're traveling a lot. And I had just had a daughter. So I knew that if I followed that path, I wouldn't have the opportunity to see my daughter as much. And when I started thinking about the hours I was committing versus the return I was getting just in the form of a paycheck, the value wasn't really there for me. So ultimately, at a certain point, my discomfort with the situation exceeded my fear of the unknown. And I personally transitioned away from private equity, away from a great paying job, and decided to take a risk and try to build something that adds value to other businesses. So that's kind of like the overview of what we're going to be talking about today. What I think would be helpful to think about as you're graduating, if you're thinking about starting a business, these are the different key points that I would recommend you guys kind of think through as someone that's done it. I threw together this pathetic little PowerPoint really quickly because I wanted to have a few topics to talk through. So if you guys are thinking about starting a company, this is what I would prioritize and kind of how I think about things. So the first thing is you have to have the right mindset. You have to have your financial house in order. So you have to have your personal finances under control, and you also have to have a handle on just financial concepts from a business perspective. And I think that's something that helped me as I kind of was transitioning into running my own business because finance is a huge part of that. You also want to make sure you have your relationships in line because there's going to be some people that are going to support you, and there's going to be others that may just be firing noise your way and not really adding any positivity. So you have to have that understanding up front. And then the last thing is expectations. And I think the expectations is still something I struggle with every day because naturally I'm someone who wants to move fast. But that's not how it works in the real world. Despite, the resources you may have, you have to be realistic about the time it's going to take to execute on your vision. So let's just starting with the mindset. I would encourage you guys to think about your why, because when times get tough and you're thinking like, this is really hard, or you're losing sleep thinking about a certain challenge that you're trying to solve, if you just go back to your why, it's going to continue to motivate you and help push you through those lows of entrepreneurship. There's definitely highs, but just like anything else, there's going to be tough times as well. And having a strong why, like a motivation, is something that's going to help push you through those moments. Also, if you don't have a high level of discipline, I would say that entrepreneurship probably isn't for you, frankly. You have to have an extremely high level of discipline, especially in the early days. There's going to be things that you may not want to do or that you don't feel like doing. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're your own boss, right? So that's nice, but the double-edged sword is you have to hold yourself accountable. So whatever tactics you want to take to execute on that. Personally, I like writing out pen to paper kind of priority action items based on what's going to move the business forward, what's going to help retain clients and expand those relationships, again, in my case, and then what are kind of the cherry on tops, like the different things that'll help improve operations and make things more efficient. So having that discipline allows you to focus on those top priorities that are going to move things forward without wasting time, resources, and energy. So a quote that I like to drop, and it's from my martial arts instructor. So I'm a black belt in martial arts. I study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he always says it's about doing what you have to do, not what you want to do. And that's a mantra that has served me really well because you don't have the luxury of passing the buck when you're an entrepreneur. It all stops with you and it starts with you as well. So if you have a strong why and you can support that with a strong level of discipline, you're already, in a position to be successful. And the fact that there's so many of you here right now willing to get my perspective and learn more about different topics means you're already in the top, 10% of people that are willing to take action. So props for even taking the time to sit in on this conversation. And the last thing is drive. So you cannot stop. You can't stop because as soon as you stop, that's when you lose. So you have to just continue to push forward um, through the good and the bad, maintain discipline, and you only lose if you give up. So as long as you have the resources and you continue to persist, you'll survive to live another day, and that's going to help you achieve your goals, right? So this is what I would kind of thinking about the mindset you would have to have going from someone that's an employee to shifting into entrepreneurship. So that's kind of like the first phase. After you guys graduate, if you don't have a business idea right now, maybe you want to aspire to start something independently, but this is kind of what you're going to be going through as you're working at your employer and getting ready to transition. The next level of making this transition is going to be the financial aspect of this. So, like I shared with you guys, I graduated, I was in a horrible position, like many people are, um, especially in the US, which is where I'm based. So, student loans are a big problem. The entry level salaries, may be able to support some of the loan amounts in some cases, but it can get out of control quickly. And in my case, like I shared, I had 100,000 just in student loan debt. So I knew that I had to eliminate my overhead as quickly as possible because by compressing my overhead and building up the cash savings, that would give me a window of opportunity, maybe 6 or 12 months uh, to kind of venture on my own. So what I did was I worked multiple jobs to eliminate that overhead. So I was paying double on the $890 a month. I did whatever I had to do. I was at the time working full time for a pension company. I would sell cars on the weekend at my dad's car dealership, and then I was DJing on the side, doing weddings and things like that, trying to scrape up cash and just completely eliminate all my overhead, all my debt. And that took me 2.5 to 3 years to go become completely debt free. And I can share with you at the time, I mean, it's not like my salary was a lot. It was, maybe $40,000 a year. I think my student loan debts were 50% um, of my take home pay after taxes and everything like that. So by having additional jobs, side hustles, whatever it took, I was taking all that extra cash and dumping it on my student loans because I knew I couldn't sustain that long term because I also had to find a way to pay rent. I also had to pay for food, all these other things. So that was taking up a huge chunk of my available budget. So that was a top priority. So once you kind of have a strong foundation from a personal financial standpoint, then you can start thinking, okay, what costs am I going to incur on this venture? So I'm very fortunate. In my case, my costs are relatively low. My costs are directly associated with client fulfillment. So I know as I continue to scale, my costs are going to go up, but in relation to the revenue that I'm bringing in, just by the nature of my business, being a digital service provider. That's not the case in a lot of other businesses. So, if you're going to start something that requires a facility, that requires inventory, that requires really expensive software, when you're thinking through your business model, you want to have an estimate of the costs that you're going to incur, say, over the first 12 months. And we'll call that phase one. Because, like I said previously, as long as you're in a position to not quit, and you have the resources to continue, your likelihood of success is just going to increase the longer you stay in the game. And the goal is just stay in the game. And having your finances nailed down is a key component of that because you can't run out of fuel. So your funds, your investment, that's the fuel that's going to keep your vision going. In order to continue to make progress towards that vision, you have to have the capital, right? So you have to have a good idea of the costs that you're going to incur on whatever type of business you want to start. It's not hard to determine this. You can go reach out to providers, do your due diligence. Depending on the type of business that you're thinking of launching, reach out to companies that have the products, services, or the goods that you're going to need to start and just have conversations. I think people are afraid to pick up the phone. And also, I think in the era of AI and automation, people lose that personal touch. But I will say I've benefited tremendously by just picking up the phone and calling people and trying to build genuine relationships. So if you're willing to take that approach and emphasize quality in these early stages and just meeting people and learning from other people, that'll also help position you for success. And you can leverage that when you're trying to figure out what is it going to cost me my first year to start. And then once you have your personal finances in order, you understand what the business is going to cost you, say for the first 6 or 12 months, then you want to have that pile of savings that you can utilize to make that transition. My personal recommendation, the way I run, my personal finances and my business finances, I'm overly conservative. I like to have 12 months of cash just sitting on the sidelines in the event of an emergency. And that helps me sleep at night. And some other people may say, that's ridiculous. Why would you have 12 months of expenses just sitting there? Well, one, it's in a high yield savings account that's giving me 5%. So it's not like it's not earning any money. I'm getting something off of it. But two, the value that that offers me as an entrepreneur and also a father and husband is I have peace of mind because I know if something happens that's unforeseen, I have the capital to absorb that hit without getting out of the game, right? Without having to go back to and become an employee and work for someone else. So the way I structure everything, it's to avoid that at all costs and to continue making progress towards my vision and expanding my business. And having that savings built up, I would say is one of the biggest things that's benefited me, not only from a peace of mind standpoint, but being able to execute and invest in myself and move the ball forward. So when you're thinking about, again, making this transition or starting a business, get your personal finances in order because that'll save you a lot of headaches down the road. And, there's no time like the present. So eliminate all excessive spending, create a budget, and eliminate any overhead that's not benefiting you and pay that down as quickly as possible. Anticipate the cost to start something up. Talk to people in the industry, talk to other business owners, network, build relationships, and go in with all eyes open. You're never going to know everything. I still don't know everything, but you can get 80 to 90% of the way there by just doing your due diligence and be aggressive about doing that due diligence, because you want to know exactly how much you have to have saved up to do this efficiently. And then that third piece is just building up your savings account. for your personal finances, for your business, and having the resources to stay persistent as you're making progress towards those goals. The next piece that kind of goes into this, uh, which I think, a lot of people overlook is the relationship aspect of it. So in my case, I'm extremely lucky. I always joke with my wife that if I ever have the opportunity to accept some type of award, I can't wait to give her all the credit because at the end of the day, she was the one who pushed me and encouraged me to take the leap. Once I was kind of in a position based on what we just described with my mindset, with my finances, with the business idea, she was the one who pushed me over the edge. And that's so important. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be on the same page with your significant other, your partner, whatever the case may be. Because if you have their support, it's just like having that strong why. It just accelerates everything. It makes it easier to dedicate the time to building something, and you don't have that relationship conflict. You want to eliminate any friction on a relationship level when you're starting something like this because it's really hard. It's hard, it's rewarding, but having the right people around you and a support system makes it a lot easier to persist and continue down that journey. So talk with your partner, set the expectations, if that means working late hours, or if that means that you used to love to go out to dinner every day, or, buy Gucci bags or something like that. Sorry, honey, you can't buy your Gucci bags until we get the business to X amount of revenue, right? You have to kind of be in line with priorities and go in on the same page because that'll make your life a lot easier. And then you can focus on what you're doing with your business without having to worry about backlash at home or fights with your wife or husband, whatever the case may be. So aligning with your partner, going through your kind of business roadmap, laying everything out and showing that you're prepared is something that served me really well. And when you have their support, it's just, even better when you're working on building up your business. And then the other part is the flip side, right? So you guys, some of you are going to continue on to have amazing careers, I'm sure. You may rise to the executive level or, who knows. But there's always going to be haters, right? And there's going to be people that secretly don't want you to succeed or that give you bad advice or always have something to say or, make backhanded comments and may not be fully in your corner. And you have to be prepared for that because it's going to come. In my case, people probably looked at me and were like, why did this guy who was, at a leadership level in the private equity industry walk away from this amazing opportunity to get into digital marketing? On paper, it doesn't make any sense, right? I had a vested interest in alternative investment funds, carried interest percentage. I had a really strong salary. I had great benefits. I had stability, as people refer it as. Um, and I'm sure there was a lot of individuals, some voiced it to me, and others were probably just thinking it in their head. But why would you do that? It seems stupid at the service. But people don't really understand the full picture. They don't understand the opportunity. They don't understand the vision or a business model because people want to stay within their comfort zone, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you kind of break the norm and you deviate from what everyone else is doing, there's going to be critics, there's going to be haters, and everyone's going to have something to say. So you just have to be prepared to block those people out and lean into those positive relationships that you have with family, friends, and have that support system because it's really helpful. And then the other thing I would say is just setting expectations. So there's a lot of people on social media, especially people that are kind of at the tail end of that journey. And when I say tail end, I mean they've already stabilized. They're already making, millions of dollars a year. They already have a team. They have plenty of resources. They have nothing to worry about. And that's how entrepreneurship is positioned a lot online, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, that's what everyone wants to flash. They want to show their Lamborghinis, their Ferraris, how successful they are, what they did to get there. But it's not like that in the beginning, obviously, right? You have to start somewhere. So you just have to have the expectation that it's not going to be glamorous in the beginning. There's no like Rocky theme song playing as you're working the long hours. Um, whether it's after hours of your current job or, early mornings, you kind of have to do whatever is necessary to advance the ball and move things forward. So it's not really glamorous in the beginning, and it can also be lonely. Um, in my case, I'm a small team. I have resources that support me, but I'm essentially a company of one. So there's not really a lot of people that I can bounce ideas off of. I work by myself, so that can kind of weigh on you over time, but it is nice. Once you kind of get through that point, you'll have clients and other business partners and things like that. So that kind of helps supplement that loneliness. And it's a long game. So you have to measure things in the long term. And I'm constantly reminding myself of this. So things don't happen overnight. You can't measure success by month or quarters. To make something incredible, it's going to take years over time. So, you can't get discouraged in the early days in that first month, 2 months, 3 months, where it may feel like nothing's happening. You just have to continue doing the right things and focusing on your priorities. And slowly over time, things will come back to you. And you'll start to have small wins. And those small wins compound and they turn into big wins. So you have to have a long time horizon when you're thinking about starting a business from scratch, especially. Um, and transitioning into entrepreneurship. So just to kind of, I guess, wrap up, a show of hands. So I can see you guys in the room. Is anyone actively thinking about like getting into entrepreneurship right out of the gate, not becoming an employee, just going right into it by a show of hands? Or are you guys thinking about getting a job first and then transitioning, becoming an entrepreneur? Raise your hand. A few people. All right. No pressure. You don't have to raise it. It's cool. I know a lot of people who have really successful careers, as employees. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think if you're gonna be an employee, just take that financial piece that I talked about and start there, right? Because if you change your mind, to be honest with you, I thought I was going to stay in finance forever. Like I thought private equity was it. When I got that job, I thought I made it. I was like, this is amazing. I'm never leaving this. And then quickly I realized I don't think I could do this like for the rest of my life. So even if you're not sure right now, I think the key takeaway, and hopefully this is helpful, the personal finance component, I can't stress it enough. Just be smart with your money. If you have loans, if you have debt, pay it off. It's not serving you. Not only is it a liability, in terms of like you owe this money to someone, but it's your monthly overhead that you're paying out. Save that money. Don't put it in your pocket and give yourself options. I think that's the best thing I did for myself, for my family. You always want to have options. So there's nothing wrong with going and working in engineering, working with an amazing firm. You could have a great career. That's awesome. Um, for those of you who are like, I'm not really sure, maybe I want to be an employee, maybe I want to start a business, just give yourself options. And you could do that by being smart with your money. So that's one of the top things that I would say that's benefited me. Um, and also by really understanding the business model that you're going to be getting into if you want to start your own business. So if you're going to launch a product, think about the cost to produce that product, the margin on the product. How many do you have to sell? How are you going to sell the product? If you're starting from scratch, you have to wait to tell people about what it is you have to offer, right? So advertising is going to be a big component of that. Is it going to be a recurring product that people can buy monthly? Are you going to have that compounded growth over time where once you have a customer, you can continue to kind of stack those customers? These are all the things that, you can think about as you're navigating those conversations and trying to come up with ideas. So I know I've been kind of ranting for about 30 minutes. I hope this was helpful, guys. Like I said, I don't know what you typically get with these things, but I more so wanted to share my journey and offer some, key advice. So hopefully it was helpful.
I'll say this was very helpful and thank you for enlightening all of us. And these are practical advice. I learned a lot. I'm sure. And thank you so much. If possible, can we continue these sessions? Because we learned a lot. Practical advice, like reading 1,000 books, it doesn't matter if you don't take the like main key like keyways, right?
Absolutely. I would love to do this. We could do this a couple more times or, as much as you guys want. If you're getting value from this,
Mhm.
I love having these conversations. I'm overwhelmed by the turnout, the
Uh-huh.
amount of people in the room. When you turned on the camera, cool, I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. So, um, that got me fired up. So if everyone in this room got value out of it and wants to hear like more of my perspective, I'd be happy to do this again. Um, to be honest with you, this was very high level. I can even get into, if there's feedback from the group and they want to talk more about the financial aspect or marketing or sales, um, maybe we can talk about the value of having some sales background in the next conversation, because that's really, I think, one of the key skills that allowed me to make the transition. It's just my personal skills. And I got that honestly by selling cars. For my dad, I sold my first car when I was 12 years old, which is crazy. So I sold the car, and my dad had to sign the contract. And that's kind of what got me into the business world is that initial aspect of selling. So I have a lot of ideas and different topics. If you guys want to hear more or get my thoughts on those other things, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Here's the thing. In India, we have lots of engineering colleges, polytechnics, ITI, different kind of colleges. But this practical aspect, this is missing. So
Yeah.
I think right now I would like to show you the infrastructure. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Um, so almost
Whoa.
every single kind of machines, industrial machine, this is ITI, robots, this and that, whatnot.
Wow.
And this is a big, huge, massive.
It's like an airplane hangar.
Yeah. So
It's
what?
huge.
Yeah, exactly. What we would like to do is we want to continue this the discussion, and we want to connect the practical aspect which we are missing right now.